Hey everyone, I'm your host Olivia, and on this podcast we dive deep into the world of health, fitness and business. So whether you're a personal trainer, a marketing manager or a business owner, we've got you covered. So make sure you click subscribe so that you never miss an episode again.
Elevate did not exist at that point. It wasn't a real event. And then at one point Max and I both looked at each other and went, what's going to happen to Elevate? I think there was this moment where I was like, gosh, yeah, this could really disrupt us. We are the brand. So when we're going to events, that is marketing. One of the things that worked really well last year was a text message campaign. Without something negative, life is hard. You have to pick your hard. In 5 years' time, will events change? I'd like to think actually they will just become...
Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Lucy Findlay Beale, the event director for Elevate, one of the biggest trade shows in the fitness, sports and physical activity world. Not only has Lucy successfully grown and shaped such a recognised event in the industry, but she's also an incredible inspiration for anyone looking to grow their career within this space. With years of experience and a unique perspective on both the business and marketing side of events, Lucy has a wealth of knowledge to share today. I am very, very excited to hear about her journey and explore some of the strategies behind Elevate's success. So welcome, Lucy.
Thank you, and thank you for such a lovely introduction. That was very nice. I could listen to that.
How are you? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to having a chat.
I am on the end of a very British cold, so I sound a bit nasally, but I promise I'm not contagious. So don't worry, you won't be leaving the room today feeling rubbish.
Don't worry, I'm probably much the same. And the last time I recorded a podcast, I was deep in cold, and it was horrible re-listen. So I'm hoping I sound a bit better today.
Yeah, you sound absolutely fine to me. So can you firstly walk us through the journey to becoming like the event director at Elevate? And I think from memory you started in recruitment, so I guess it'd be interesting to see like what inspired you to take the path in events as well.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I actually started, when I was at university, I was doing all the kind of hospitality work that so many people do to get for a uni, stayed in that for a little while, and then I ended up going actually into the gym space. So I was working for Ballantyne. I worked for them in sales and marketing for a few years. And then I kind of moved into recruitment. I was in sales and marketing, kind of knew I liked selling. And a friend of a friend had a recruitment company and was like, I think you'd be really good. I hated it. I really didn't enjoy it, if I'm honest. And, full on hats off to anyone who works within that space, because it's intense, it's full on. And you're kind of selling the only product that can change its mind, which is people. And it's really challenging. But I learned so much. I was only in that for about a year. And I actually needed to relocate. So it was a good way to move out of recruitment. At one point, I thought I might stay in it and stay with the company I was in and move to one of their other offices. And then in my job search, I came across Elevate. And it actually landed back on my desk because I'd sent my CV to loads of recruiters applying for I was in a very fortunate position. I could apply for pretty much anything. I didn't have to worry about rent or mortgage at that time. I was in a really comfortable place.
Yeah.
And it did mean I could take some risks. And this recruiter phoned me and said that you've applied for something that you're well overqualified for, but let's have a chat. Let's see what you'd like to do.
And what was the role? Was it just like...
it was like writing tenders or something. It was just like, I just need a job in the South, and I was living in Leicester at the time.
Nice.
I was applying for anything. And then she phoned me like 2 days later and was like, I'm going to send you something that's just come in. I think this is perfect for you. And it was Elevate. And Elevate did not exist at that point. It wasn't a real event.
Wasn't born yet.
Yeah, it was in its very much its early days. And because I was in that really fortunate position where I could take a risk, I was a bit like, what happens if this event runs in May and then doesn't work and then doesn't run again?
That's
it.
And
that was, I was, now with a mortgage and everything, you wouldn't be in that position to take such a risk. But I was so lucky that I was, because 9 years on, I'm still in it and on it. So jumped into Elevate, didn't know trade shows really, had been to a few expos before. Elevate hadn't run before. didn't know the team prior to joining, and ended up as working there as an account manager, launching the show alongside Max, who was the founder. And that was 2016, our first event, and moved from Olympia to Excel, moved from account manager to sales manager. And then in end of 2019's event, Max and I had a chat, and he said, I think you should be the event director. In fact, I think and I'm actually seeing him tomorrow, I think actually what happened, his parents said, Lucy is the event director of this show. She cares about it way more than you do at this point. It's time for you to pass it over. So he passed that over, and kind of the idea was he would hold my hand from the end of the 2019 cycle, so from kind of end of June 2019 all the way through to June 2020. And 2020 would be my first year as event director, and we all know how 2020 went.
Not to be spoken about.
I'm sure we'll talk about it quite a lot, but it was one of those where that was the idea, and I guess his kind of, and his plan was from that to step away from it, which he has now done. So that's kind of how I became the event director for Elevate. But I was in a very fortunate place to take some risks. And I don't know if I'd be as brave to take those risks now, or be in a position to. So I feel really lucky to have been able to do that.
So what happened during that period of 2020? Surely, did you still run something, or was it online? Did you just stop completely? What was the situation?
It was a really bizarre time.
I
remember kind of February 2020, and it started to become more of a conversation. We were looking at what Ursa was doing, and what actually companies that were exhibiting at Ursa were doing. They were all cancelling, and Ursa was in a very difficult spot because their event was coming, but life was still running. And as an event organizer, a month out from the show, you've pretty much paid for everything. So you're in a position where it's go. You've potentially collected most of your money in, or hopefully you have, or you're just chasing those last stand payments. You've paid for everything. You just are in that lead up to delivery. And obviously they were kind of, what do we do? So we were getting people, our exhibitors, saying, well, we've decided we're going to cancel that. They've lost their money. People are saying, what do you think is going to happen with FIBO? And I'm like, I don't know. And in the back of our minds, and then at one point Max and I both looked at each other and went, what's going to happen to Elevate? And we were June, they were March and April. Everyone was saying this could blow over, and we were like, I don't know if it's going to blow over. So when we had the kind of Boris saying you've got to work from home, we were like, okay, let's just, if people come to us, we'll just say we're assessing the situation. But reality was no one was asking us, because everyone was trying to safeguard their own business. Elevate was the least important thing.
That was just an added bonus in a way, isn't it, for them?
And it was also that thing where they were very aware that if we're in a lockdown, the event's not going to happen.
No, exactly.
There was also a level of trust that we would do the right thing. So it wasn't really until it was then called a state of national emergency that we had to do something more about it. And we had to publicly say, look, we are postponing the event. And at that time, Excel were, well, you postpone it until a time where you can run. Because nobody knew how long it was going to last. Exactly. So we were postponed then until October or September, October time. And when we sent that email out, people phoned me, but like, do you actually think it's going to happen? And we were like, we'll be honest, we don't know, but we will do the best we can to let you know as soon as we know and make the right decision. So, of course, we didn't run in 2020 in June. We didn't run in that autumn as initially planned. We then rescheduled for June 21. And then when the roadmap came out, we missed the ability to have that size event by a week. Which it was like, oh, for goodness sake, you know, but
something
actually,
else to think of.
but actually it wouldn't have been the right time to bring it back anyway. The sector wasn't ready.
No.
And And then we actually moved it to September 21. And then we still didn't run it then. We pushed it again because of the sector being ready. Like while you could legally run an event, it didn't mean it was the right thing to do. Just because we could doesn't mean we should. And I think especially the suppliers were really glad that we didn't.
Yeah.
Like basically make them do an event that they weren't ready for, the sector wasn't ready for. Buyers didn't have any kind of, not even money, but even the thought process of I'm going to start refurbing my gym or whatever it might be. So it was a long drawn out couple of years of being an event director for an event that couldn't happen. But we learned so much in that time. Hopefully I'll never have to be in that situation again, but you learn a lot from it. And it really reinforced that we create Elevate for the industry, and therefore we have to make sure it is appropriate for the industry at all those times.
And if it was to happen again, like, do you think, like, what would you think you'd do? Do you think you have to think of something else, like a different strategy completely? Or
I don't know. It's funny because things are starting to go online, and there was this kind of like, are online and virtual events going to be a thing? And
short term.
I think there was this moment where I was like, gosh, this could really disrupt us.
Yeah.
And then about three months into that, everyone was like, I need people again.
Yeah.
So this whole new normal was a temporary fix. It wasn't, everyone wants to be face to face. So we could have recorded this remotely. Yeah. It's so much nicer to do it face to face.
Yeah, I think the point in Elevate is to network with people in person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And did it change drastically from like 2016 to now? Like, is it the same as what the strategy was beforehand, if that makes sense? So I know there's a bit of something in between, but is it still the same?
I think the mission and the purpose is as strong as it ever was.
Yeah.
And actually before Elevate this year, so I always get in my years are all mixed up because to me my year runs June to June.
Fine.
like a teacher almost, like having that academic year.
Once the baby's done, it's been delivered, you're like, next one.
It's very much like my friends who are teachers have academic years and I have the Elevate years. So before Elevate 24, we sat down with a brand expert because I was really aware I was the only person at that point who'd always been on Elevate.
Yeah.
So it was really important for us to kind of get aligned, understand what Elevate is when we're marketing it, when we're selling it, etc. So we're all on the same page. And I really wondered whether that would all get ripped apart and I'd realise it was something different to what I thought it was back in 2016 or 2015 when we started building it. And actually it's exactly what it was from the core.
Fine.
It is still,
that's good, though.
I think it's credit to Max for creating something that has that mission is so strong and so valid. And the reality is that Elevate is there to bring together all those best places to tackle physical inactivity. That's such a big mission that until the whole nation hits the right amount of physical activity guidelines, there's still more work to do. So actually the event probably could always exist and it can always have that kind of...
There'll always be something.
Exactly. So I think that was a really interesting thing to do, that kind of ripping it all apart and really questioning the why of everything and how and all of that. It was exactly what Max mapped it out to be.
And it gave you that confidence to be like, okay, it is what it is. We are portraying it the way it needs to be. No, that's nice. That's good.
So it felt quite reassuring that all those kind of years, it still made sense to the sector.
Yeah. If you're looking for some support with your digital marketing, then we'd love to talk to you at Boss Digital, because that's exactly what we do. As an agency, we offer websites, PPC, SEO, social and content marketing. So make sure you check out our website and our client case studies on Olivia. Oh, that's not Olivia. So check out our website and our client case studies on boss-digital.co.uk, or send me an email on olivia@boss-digital.co.uk. And when it comes to promoting Elevate, what marketing tactics have you found the most effective? And I guess anything that other businesses can maybe use to elevate, pardon the pun, their marketing efforts as well.
It's amazing how much the word elevate
I know, I'm like,
comes.
I can't use that word.
It's in so many other brands' marketing as well. They'll be like, elevate this. And I'm just like, brilliant.
Well, they've done it on purpose. Well done to Max.
Yes, no, it's a good choice of name. But I'm not a marketing expert. And obviously I have a team that over the years have worked on Elevate's marketing strategy. It's quite interesting how it's changed over the years because Elevate has become more and more known. So as your brand becomes more known and more understood, your marketing has to change. I remember our really early adverts, it was cram as much information as possible so everyone knew what it was.
Yeah.
And now our adverts in print magazines are pretty like
coming soon.
Save the date. It's very like
that's nice.
It's nice. It's interesting though because it was really like, oh, actually we don't have to cram
sell
everything. Yeah, it's a really different thing. So we still have, a good amount of budget does go in print marketing and some of that being digital now as opposed to print, but still kind of with those media partners.
Yeah.
That's for a few reasons. People still look at those and still go to them and they are dropping into your inbox constantly, or if you want to check something, you will go to certain publications.
Yeah.
But also we want to support them because, they are industry publications. I think it's important that we support them in the same way we work with associations and partners as well. And we support them financially and with kind of attending their events and word of mouth support. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's always been the case, I think, through Elevate, and even more so now, is that we are the brand. So when we're going to events, that is marketing.
Yeah.
We are those people. And there are rooms that sometimes I look at my diary and I'm like, I'm all over the place, this week being one of those days. But it's so important because I am Elevate to some extent.
Yeah.
And we have to be seen at these events. And if we're not, I feel it's a missed opportunity, but also it's partly what we promote is face-to-face engagement and marketing and being at those events. So we are part of that marketing. And I think that's why I'm always kind of quite with my brand, like with my team, like we've got to be on brand. You've got to think about how you're acting and being in those rooms, because when we are in those rooms, we are representing a brand that we have worked really, really hard on for a long time to have a standard. So we obviously have print and more traditional methods. We have ourselves as these walking adverts. We have actually really good success with our email and our newsletters, which is great. And I think that's because our data has been organically collected over the years.
And is that like monthly newsletters? Is it like...
Yeah, pretty much.
What do you talk about? Is it like all running up to Elevate, like new guests that are coming on or like information about them? Like what do you actually talk about in the newsletters? Because obviously Elevate is like one day, isn't it? Or a few days.
Yeah. So it's really interesting actually about how we make something that's a 2-day a 365. It's quite hard to do, and we're very aware that for us Elevate's super important all year round, but for most of the industry it's important for 2 days a year. But if those newsletters are there to support our exhibitors and partners and people like that, so we'll often put their news in it, and then from January, when registration goes live, it does start to shift much more to what's happening at the event.
Yeah.
So it does kind of split into those kind of two blocks of 6 months, which is, and we are starting to kind of pull news from Elevate theatres that are going to be there, people that are coming back, work that we're doing within our sustainability campaigns, etc. And thinking back to last week's newsletter, they're typically monthly, and then as we gear up closer to the show, they'll be more frequent. But the goal is that they are there for our exhibitors and partners and their news. So it's also that added value. Yes, you've booked to be at Elevate for 2 days and meet thousands of people, but we have a database of about 40,000. And if you've got something to share, we can help you also share that and link it through to their website. And it's just another outlet for them. I'm sure there is more we could do with it, but I also think there's a little bit about like staying in your lane, if that makes sense, and knowing what we are for, what we're for, and knowing other people and other media outlets can also do, so like all of it comes together to help the sector. I don't want to be kind of like stepping over people's toes. And also come January when registration lives, it just goes crazy anyway. So
I don't want to do anything else.
It's like managing. It's like the
busy
actual,
as it is.
just making sure that we're actually delivering what we can deliver really well.
Now, how do you target new people? As in, how do you keep growing the event? Is there like a capacity as well, or do you just hope for the best?
It's a really interesting one. So within events marketing, we have kind of two areas that we need to focus on. So we have our X-Prom and our Viz-Prom. So X-Prom's very much your exhibitor promotion.
Yeah.
So that's that's constant, and that's probably more where us as a brand representation is much more like X-Prom focused, being at events, talking to potential exhibitors or current exhibitors. We do also have newsletters and emails, like target them in a way that's like, this is a floor plan, this is who's booked, let's get in front and have a chat about what you want to do. And some of our marketing is for both, like the save the date stuff that's kind of you'll see in print magazines at the moment. Yes, we're wanting visitors and attendees to save the date, but that's also for suppliers to the industry, those that would normally exhibit, to go, oh, we need to get organised and get on that. So that's constant, and we always have our wish list of the brands that we want there. We also kind of think about trends within the industry or new areas of growth where we're kind of going, right, we're seeing success in this. One of the things, like post-pandemic, the software guys were having the best time because they were probably one of the only kind of markets that were constantly making money throughout, whereas the equipment suppliers were having a harder time. Now we're seeing Reformer Pilates going, really
through the roof.
It's crazy. So then we can kind of go, right, they're having a good time, we need to make sure we're talking to those brands. So you can see those trends and you start going, right, who do we need to be talking to? And typically the three people that work across the sales of the exhibition, we have our own sections that we kind of sit within, and we have not just a wish list of brands, but a wish list of categories that we want in there. And we can look at trends and pick those out. So that's a lot more kind of searching and finding and reaching out to people. So it's less marketing and more just kind of a sales strategy, but we will have marketing that supports that. And then we have Viz-Prom, so all the visitor promotion stuff. And that's really much my marketing team that look after that. But we do try and get a bit creative with it because we know our newsletters work quite well and we kind of have good relationships with the media partners. It allows us to try something new each time. So we get to kind of dip in and out and try different things.
I was going to say, most people like new shiny offerings each year, so it must be hard to like keep on top of that. But again, it makes it quite refreshing for you guys as well, not to keep doing the same thing every year and actually think of new ideas, which is quite nice.
And currently we're working with a marketing agency that specialises in events marketing.
Oh, that's good.
So what's great about that is, and we started working with them after the pandemic because they could see how other events, the success they were having in other events. So they could say, like, this works really, really well. Let's try something like this for Elevate. One of the things that worked really well last year was a text message campaign to anyone who had registered before and hadn't registered yet. It's those quick links to get people to go, oh yeah, I need to register. Because we are focused and they are targeted a lot on not just the numbers through the door, but the pre-reg, so who's actually registered. And we sometimes need to look at meeting those people where they are. So if they're really busy and we know that people's inboxes are notoriously very busy, like just drop them a text. And if they're just on a train and they're like, oh yeah, I'll just click that link and I'm registered and I'm done.
That's a great idea.
And it's just easy to do. Or thinking about the timings of an email reaching you. Because it's like first thing Monday morning is manic. Like, that's like, no, not another thing on my to-do list. So I think, trialing and playing with things like that, it's quite good. But yeah, we're always open to looking at other ways to market. I think social media is a really interesting one for us because we're a B2B event. It's working out where we sit within that social media space.
I mean, LinkedIn is becoming very much that space, isn't it?
It's massive.
It's become this social media. situation.
It is, and I'm awful on it.
Yeah,
which is why I'm so glad.
I've definitely seen some good posts from you, but is it you or is it?
Well, sometimes it's me, but sometimes it's my team going, Lucy, you need to post.
Yeah.
Lucy, you need to post. And I'm very aware.
You're the brand.
I know I've been to numerous events over the last couple of weeks, and I still need to post. But the sector's very good at it.
Yeah.
But the sector's very social.
Yeah.
So I think it's brilliant that there is this professional social platform that we can use.
Yeah.
And it is really, whenever I go on it, I have to almost be like, you're just going to go on for 15 minutes and then you're going to get off because you can waste so much time on it.
Yeah, that is very true.
And I'm quite aware of how
time consuming it can be.
And also, once you see something on LinkedIn, you can never find it again. Like,
no.
It's a crazy...
The algorithms all over the shop.
I know, but that's how it gets you. Yeah. I really feel that. So social media is interesting. We definitely get our best results from LinkedIn.
Okay.
On social media, when we've run campaigns, social media campaigns, and we've run PPC campaigns, because we're in a fitness, health, well-being, that space, and they're the kind of words we're using, it's a really expensive campaign.
Yeah.
Because
LinkedIn's expensive anyway.
Yeah.
Just as a channel, it's horrendous.
Yeah. LinkedIn is an expensive one. And actually, I find LinkedIn's the one that we don't have to use PPC on as much because you just have to tag in the right people and be consistent and things like that. But when we're using PPC on other things like Instagram, X, I was about to call it Twitter, X, which we've started using less and less of, which I think a lot of brands
I was going to say it's quite interesting you're still using that. Yeah,
we kind of just feed through from Instagram through to it now.
Yeah, fine.
Facebook has its place. I don't even use Facebook personally, but there's a lot of groups on there, PTs and people like that still kind of utilize that space. So that's probably changed more over the kind of 9 years of Elevate and then we've had to adapt our approach and how much we used it. The early days, Twitter was huge for us.
I was going to say Instagram wasn't as big, I guess 2016. I'm trying to think timing wise, but that probably wasn't as big, was it? But now it's obviously blown up. Do you use TikTok?
We don't, but it's one of those that gets mentioned to us.
Yeah, it was like, oh, shall I dabble in it or shall I not? Like, do I go into that?
I find it it's crazy. It's so interesting that it is used by Gen Z as a search engine.
Yeah.
We have to think about who are we wanting to see. I was going to say,
I'm not sure it's quite your audience, is it? Yeah. I mean, maybe it will be in a couple of years' time, but at the moment it doesn't seem to be like fitting into your audience.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. If we were a business to consumer event, 100%, we'd be across that. We'd be bigger on Instagram. We'd be a slightly different tone on Instagram. But for us, being a B2B event and so solidly B2B, we have to make sure our marketing messaging across social fits that. And that's probably where my marketing team probably get most annoyed at me, because I'm like, no, is this got the right tone? Has this got the right... But while still trying to be like fun and not as serious, because it's social and we're aware people are often going to that for a bit more of an escape or something like that. So it's a really hard line, I think, with that. And when you're as protective as a brand as I am of Elevate, I think I don't make that easy for the team.
Well, you got to do what you got to do. And challenges, I feel like there must have been many challenges along the way from your journey from 2016 onwards.
Yeah.
So what is your biggest challenges that you've had to face so far?
Yeah, so I think the pandemic's like an obvious challenge.
Yeah,
and I spoke about that a lot on the Love Recruitment podcast, because we really spoke about what that meant, not just from postponing events, learning all of that, the struggles with that, the financials of keeping a business going without 2 years of income, bringing an event back that was booked pre-pandemic, delivered post-pandemic, and it kind of didn't quite feel like it suited the time, because we'd booked 2020 was meant to be our biggest show. Most of that was booked before we went into lockdown,
and your biggest role.
Yeah, exactly. God. And we could have moved it. And then everyone had booked, everyone was still brands that survived were there. But then it was kind of like in this post-pandemic time where no one had any money to to do anything. It was all very odd. And then the shows that have followed it are now much more in keeping with the sector now. Elevate should always, and it pretty much always does. I think the 22 event was the only one where it didn't quite represent what it should have done because of the time it was booked and the time it was delivered. But Elevate should always represent what's happening in the industry.
Yeah.
From the conversations that are happening to the exhibitors that are there and how the audience feel and the vibe. And I think this year everyone's like, God, it was such a vibe. And I think that's because even 4 years after lockdowns, we were actually finally back. It was like it took so much longer to
You're probably
come back.
treading on eggshells a little bit as well. Like, is this right? Is it
I
the
think
right time?
22 was like, we had to bring it out, but we were very aware. We were asking people to exhibit it when we knew that buyers were still kind of
struggling a little bit. And
and they were still trying to kind of bring stuff back to normal before they could start spending again. But in the same way, suppliers still needed to get in front of people and have those conversations, and knowing that it was just a bit of a longer churn to get their ROI, as opposed to we've had people that exhibited this year that were getting ROI then and there. Do you know what I mean? It's such a different time. So that kind of whole challenge of knowing when was the right thing to do, what was the right thing to do when in the pandemic, was obviously a massive challenge. I think one of the things I've realised, probably now I have a bit more of a team around me, of how lonely it was when Max stepped away. So Max and I had worked on Elevate since it launched. He was creating it before I came on board, but it was just concept. It had all these different names and ideas of what it could be. And I came on board literally 9 years ago, so October 2015. And we kind of, got stuck in. It was really hard to sell an event. I'd never worked in event sales before. Elevate had never existed before. It was tough getting off the ground.
Yeah.
And I didn't know whether this was going to be what I did or how it was going to work.
Yeah.
As soon as I got on site, I just loved it, and everything just clicked.
How did you get people on your side? As in, like, how did you say, right, this is an event that you need to be coming to? Like, what was the sort of first instinct about getting people to come? Because I feel like that's the hardest thing to do, is when you're not recognising industry, to get people to trust you that it's a good idea to come to this event.
I have to say that's all down to Max. So Max's history was he organised LIW. So he was part of the LIW team. So he knew a lot of people from that. He stepped away from LIW for a couple of years and worked on another event, which was a launch event within the food space. So I think he picked up lots of kind of ideas on how to create something a little bit different. It was a slightly different event concept. And then he kind of launched Elevate. So Max was the person that I was like, I'm working with Max on this, and everyone was like, oh yeah.
Okay, so he was like the industry person that you sold in a way to get them to come.
He was very, and he'd been selling on the show and talking to people, and he really, when he created Elevate, he went to the sector and said, what do you want? What event do you want? And I'll create it.
Yeah.
And that's what we continually do. Like I know it's such a kind of cliche, I guess, but it's made for the industry with the industry, and that is fully at the heart of every decision we make. Does this make sense for the industry? And I feel very, very fortunate that I have a number of people, operators, suppliers, associations, people that when I first started, I was like, oh my God, they're amazing. And now I get to go to them and say, can I ask you a question? And this might be completely stupid, but what are your thoughts on this? And they'll be honest with me, and it might not be quite right, and we'll tweak it and we'll change it. They might say, yeah, no, I don't think that's quite where it needs to be, and we'll work on it to create what the actual industry needs, because they're in it all the time. And
and that's the best research, right? It's just getting feedback from the people who actually attend it.
Yeah, exactly. And the people that they're not just attend it, but are in the sector constantly creating it. Elevate is fully for that. So it's a really funny one where you're so connected to so many people within the space, asking them all these questions. But there was definitely a time where Max had stepped away. He'd left the show. It had moved to a larger events company, where we sit now within a larger events company. We had all these other shows around us. I say us, it was pretty much just me, because Max had gone. And we had all these other shows. We had an ops team, we had a marketing team, we had all these kind of people around, an MD that looked after the whole group, who is amazing and actually lets every event and portfolio director just crack on and do what they want to do, trusts them with the shows.
Yeah.
But suddenly you're like, I'm the only person that has been on it since it launched who not cares about it, but it's a different thing, who gets it and understands it in a way. Whereas I used to have Max, who I'd just be like, you know, if that sale didn't come in that you really thought was going to come in, you didn't have to explain it. They just got it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel sorry for my husband because he'll be like, how's work? And I'm like, I just can't even explain. Like, you know, like I'm too tired to explain it. Whereas there was definitely a thing where if someone's been on it with you, gets it, you can just be like, ugh, this happened.
Just one eye contact, but an eye contact, and you'd be like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, definitely. And when there was frustrations or things, you just were so aligned in that.
Yeah.
And we also had this amazing way of working, and I think this is how we got through the pandemic. Was it was unspoken rule that if one of us was up or the other, like the one of us was down, the other person couldn't come down and be there with them. We had to kind of balance each other out. And we definitely flicked between that during the pandemic when we found one of us found it particularly difficult or heartbreaking or whatever. The other person would be like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Is what we're going to do. Not in a get over it way, in a don't worry, we've got a strategy, we've got this. And then the next week it would flip over and I'd have the wobble and Max would pull me back. And that's a really wonderful thing to have. And sometimes, not so much now, because I do feel like I have that now with the team that's now on board and I work with. But there was definitely like a year when I was like, no one else understands or cares.
I'm just down.
Yeah, and I'm just down. I need someone to pick me back up. But it just makes you realise how isolating it can be when you're in something that's so consuming and it's such a big part of my identity. It's really important to have people along that journey with you.
And then, because once you've ran Elevate, is it literally the year planning, blood, sweat and tears up to the next Elevate? Is that what it is?
I'm already...
Because people don't realise the amount of commitment that goes into this. They just attend it thinking, oh, this is great. Like,
the classic is, so what do you do now? Do you just go on holiday? And you're like, no. So we start I've already started thinking about 26 now. Yeah. And before we go on site for 25, we'll be kind of planning 26. That might be people that we have a number of exhibitors who basically book before they even go on site. Fine. Or in build up they're just going, can I just have a look at the plan for next year? I want to make sure I'm in my same spot and all that kind of stuff, which is a really nice place to be in. And they're kind of like some of the best conversations at the show because you're like, oh, thank you. Like you still feels very personal. So we are always thinking, right, the next one. And 2026 will be our 10 years, 8 shows because we obviously missed 2 years because of the pandemic. But our 10 years, so we're already thinking about what do we want to do around that and what could it be. And we're having some of the stuff that will happen at 25 is a stepping stone to what we could do in 26. And we just want to test the water with a few different new concepts and things like that. So it's a really interesting perception that people are like, oh, it's just 2 days. And you're like, it's a lot, you know, to do. And it's every conversation that ends up being an exhibitor saying yes. Like that's so many different conversations.
Yeah,
there'll be brands,
it's not just as easy as like, yeah, we'll come.
Yeah, and there'll be brands that I've been speaking to for years that still haven't exhibited. And you're still, or did it 8 years ago and haven't come back, and now they're kind of going, oh yeah, we need to look at this. It's not as simple as, hey, do you want to come? Yeah, great, cool, let's go. And then the program side and getting all the speakers aligned, it's constant. And,
I can imagine.
And then also constantly every decision you make in regards to the content or new areas, does that make sense? Does that add value? How do we market that? How expensive is it going to be, for what return, and all that kind of stuff is all, and return isn't just financial return, it's attendees or experience or whatever. So it's very much it constantly flows. There are definitely peaks though. So from March to the show, it's kind of a joke in our house. I'll come home, and as soon as I'm home, the laptop opens and I'm like, I need to do work tonight. And I remember one year my husband's like, from now on, I'm just going to assume you're doing work tonight. Because it's like every night you're telling me you're doing work. And I definitely feel when it comes to Elevate, and I look back on those kind of like 3 months of madness, it's like, the thanking list isn't just the team that make Elevate happen. It's my dog walker, the cleaner, the gusto, the kind of healthy, ready to go meals that basically mean that the house still runs when I'm working from kind of 7 a.m. till sometimes early hours of the morning.
I feel like events always look glamorous, but realistically, reality hits, and it's definitely not as glamorous as everyone thinks it is.
I joke about my husband. So he's in the industry, he's an operator. And I joke that he thought he was marrying Lucy from Elevate. Like, oh, this is like cool. And I'm like, actually, you're marrying Lucy from Elevate. And they are two different things. So it's like that side where, those few months. And also when we're at an event and he'll be like, are we ready to go? And I'm like, no, I've got all these people still to talk to. And he's like,
that's what you signed up for.
I don't think he quite realised that, but never mind. He gets on with it now.
And do you think you'll start doing more like intimate, smaller events, or is it always going to be like the big Elevate, the 2-day event?
It's an interesting one. It's definitely a conversation that comes up quite a lot. We'd like to do more with our associations and our partners and the people that help create the themes around Elevate. So we have spoken about having small like round tables that help us move the conversations actually at Elevate further. So they'd be less about like an event for marketing and networking and things like that. It's more like round tables around sustainability, for example. So we had a sustainability survey and report that we announced at Elevate this year, and we worked with an external partner. So we're talking to her at the moment about, should we get the people that contributed to that, some of them in a room, and talk about the next steps, and then we can have that conversation then openly at Elevate. So we've kind of done some work in between. The same for kind of all the EDI content, working with the experts within EDI and saying, how do we make this more successful for you at Elevate? And hopefully those meetings and those conversations are kind of, they're less like events and more just really concentrated meetups to kind of get the best out of those 2 days. My goal really is to support other events in the space that run those intimate events or those kind of meet the buyer formats. I'm really lucky. We have a great relationship with ActiveNet. And they kindly invite me as a guest to their events, and I get to go and network with people while all these meetings are happening. And then I've just come back from W3 Fit, and David, back when he was working on Cybec and now at W3, has invited me along to, again, network and support their events as a guest. And we obviously welcome them all to Elevate and share leads and ideas and support each other as much as we can. That's as event organisers, we get it in a different way sometimes. And that's always really lovely. So I think for us, I'm of a really collaborate, don't compete mentality within event space. Would I look at running Meet the Buyers not in the territories that are already set up and doing really well? For me, it confuses the industry if there's too much of the same thing. Because 100%. Then it's suppliers don't have limitless budgets. They have an amount to use. You start bringing new things in for them to spend money on for the same return, it's confusing. So for me, all the kind of stuff that we'd launch, new things, would be out of territory. So obviously we're launching India at the moment. We're interested in the Middle East. But again, it's working out what's there. India, there's nothing. So we're really able to go in and create something that will be really exciting. The Middle East, there are stuff, but we're looking at where is there gaps that we could maybe fill if
That'd
it's appropriate.
Interesting. Just more to add to your plate though. Why not?
Why not? Why not? Yeah.
And looking ahead, do you think the landscape for fitness events is changing? Like, do you think in-person events will still be present in 5 years' time? Or do you think maybe we'll be attending events in the metaverse? Like, who knows?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The whole metaverse stuff.
It's all very bizarre.
Yeah, I've attended a few sessions around it. And at one point I was like, I think I get it, but I don't know if I do. And if I do get it, I don't know why I need to get it.
Yeah.
And I kind of joke that I've got enough stuff to do in the real life. I don't need to create more things.
Another world.
Another world. Like, you know, my to-do list is long enough without having another world I need to create, do stuff in. So I think that...
Unless you're looking for another husband, you know.
Yeah, and I'm pretty happy with what I got at the moment. It's only been a year, so...
It's early days.
But I think it's one of those where... Yeah, going back to those online times, pandemic. Oh, isn't Teams brilliant? Zoom's great. We can have all these virtual events, and you can walk around a virtual exhibition. And I was like, this is awful. Like this is not the reason we create events and why events work. Events work because we thrive on face-to-face real connections.
Yeah.
Like humans do, not just the fitness industry. Humans do need that.
Yeah.
And there was kind of this whole new normal, this is how life's going to be. And it's like a couple of years in total of disrupted working and distance working didn't take away that we wanted face-to-face contact. It actually made it so important.
Yeah.
And really honed that that's what we want. Social media and technology will play a part in how events and businesses move forward. It is fantastic that you can have a meeting over Teams and you don't have to travel. In my early days of Elevate, I was going up and down to Birmingham, Manchester, all that kind of area, seeing clients on the road a lot. I'm really lucky. There's 2 reasons I don't do that as much as I used to. Now I know these people and I will see them as in when they're in London or we're at events or it's appropriate to meet up, but also because I can give them a call and it's our relationship's in a different place.
Yeah.
But and I'm not going to even attempt to quote it, but I know there are stats around how long a virtual connection can keep the physical connection going before you need that
to see them.
And that's the same in business as it is in personal. So you do need those face-to-face top-ups. And I think the pandemic just made that really, really clear to people.
Yeah.
The sector also, you know, Elevate within that physical activity space, we are working in face-to-face and people connection. And I'm not saying that Elevate and its audience is unique. Events, all of B2B events and business consumer events are based on the fact that business is done well face-to-face. Connections and relationships flourish more in those environments. So in 5 years' time, will events change? I'd like to think actually they will just become more and more important. When I go to events and I'm not on my laptop working, I know who I'm going to see and I can tick that off and have those conversations in a much more succinct way and a much more genuine way than just going back and forth on an email exchange.
And you always feel good after going to an event or like speak to someone. You always feel positive. You always have so much energy. Whereas when you're on your laptop all day, just chatting to people on Teams all day, it's quite tiring.
Yes, it's exhausting. And it's also, we don't give ourselves the time to process it either.
Yeah.
I've started,
Next one.
I've started putting my meetings in for 45 minutes instead of half an hour, because then I've got 15 minutes to wrap that up in my head or on notes or however, because otherwise you're just going back to back to back to back and jumping around from different company to different objectives constantly, and it's exhausting. And it's exhausting in work life. It's exhausting in personal life. Like WhatsApp, the other day I had over 50 unread WhatsApp messages, and I was like,
business or personal?
Half and half.
Okay.
I try and put business stuff into my archive and personal stays in my
thing.
Oh,
that's clever.
Yeah, just because otherwise you can go on it to message somebody back, you know, a friend back at 9:30 at night, and you'll just see all these work messages and you're just like, you know.
Yeah, and you feel obliged to it.
I feel obliged to reply, but you don't want to reply because also they might not be wanting you to reply at 9:30.
Yeah.
And then you'll forget to reply. So I kind of go, right, just check the archive and just go through that.
You need a work phone.
I do, but I had a work phone when I worked in recruitment, and I found it really hard to have 2 phones.
That's true, yeah.
So I kind of just archive it, and it typically works.
Yeah.
And also everyone's got my number now, so
Can't
it'd be really hard to move over to that now.
Yeah.
But I think, you have it where in your personal life, you have like this kind of overload of technology to keep up with people.
Yeah.
And then when you actually meet up with friends for a coffee, you're like, oh, this is so nice just to
speak to you and not be on my phone.
Yeah, exactly. So actually I think as technology becomes more and more in our everyday life, the more we crave those times without it. So I'm hoping, therefore, that face-to-face events will just continue to grow and develop, and they will integrate technology within them. Of course they will.
Yeah. And
our businesses will continue to use AI and other kind of resources that are available to us to make our lives easier. But so I think so we can actually focus on the stuff that can't be replaced by technology, which is that face-to-face contact and connection.
So talking of AI, what AI tools are you currently using at Elevate that you weren't really using before?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
I was just going to say, I feel like in-person events, it's actually quite hard to use AI. So there must be a few things that just helps organise it or do something with it.
Yeah, and there's probably way more out there than I'm aware of for the event space. There's an event for event organisers, and I'm sure if I digged into some of their attendees and exhibitors, there'd be brands there that I could work with to get kind of better results. I think it's more about making our lives easier. So you talk about LinkedIn posts, for example. I am putting off writing LinkedIn posts because my mental space and stuff is going on other things which I deem more important.
Yeah.
Checking sales emails or putting things along or getting stands sorted for people that want those stands. That's kind of more important than, in some ways, whether wrongly or rightly, to me, than writing a LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
But I still need to do that. It's still important. So I will use ChatGPT I will say, can you write me a LinkedIn post? And I'll put the bullet points in.
Yeah.
And it will come back. That is my first draft. I would never just copy and paste it because one of the biggest skills with using AI is to un-AI it. It's very much, for me, it's my first draft when I'm in a mental block or I'm procrastinating over a task.
Yeah.
And then I can rip it apart.
It's good for ideas, isn't it? It gives you ideas when you've just
get you started on something you're putting off doing.
Yeah.
I've used it before when I need to think about language or communicating something. And I'm like, how do I say this but in a whatever way?
Yeah.
And it's quite good at giving those examples. And we started this year loosely working with, but we want to work with them more, with Hire Bob, which work within the fitness space a lot, within basically helping members get the answers to the questions they want, but it's a much more intelligent chatbot. So we started working with it a bit on the program. So for example, you'd go on and you'd see, we had 11 education theatres at Elevate last year. There's a lot of content, so it can be a bit overwhelming. So we wanted to create this platform where you'd come in and you'd say, something, say, what are you? And it's like, okay, well, I'm a sales and marketing for an operator. Okay, what do you want to learn about? I want to learn about retention, new marketing strategies, and I'm also personally interested in nutrition. Okay, what days are you coming? Oh, Wednesday and Thursday morning. Perfect. These are the sessions you should go to.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's quite like an interesting way of us going, right, we've got a problem, which is a great problem to have. We have a lot of content.
Yeah.
So,
and you can't just have FAQs on the page because actually there's too many questions to ask.
Exactly. There's
and
too many
quite
variables.
Specific as well.
Yeah. So then it's going, right. And what we don't want is you look at that content, you go, oh, it's overwhelming. I don't know what I'm going to go to. I'm not going to go to anything.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of going, right, let's make it a really easy way for you to find out what's relevant for you.
Yeah.
And then we started thinking about that more with our exhibitors. So actually making sure that those exhibitors are found. So again, with that kind of example, You might say, I work within the health and well-being part of an operator. I'm here to get more people that don't currently exercising. I want products that look at musculoskeletal conditions and engage in the inactive, and then it will give me a list of exhibitors that could do that.
That's clever.
And that will all be based on what their write-ups are. So it also encourages our exhibitors to really give full write-ups of what their brand is, and we can plug all that in. So that's what we're working with Higher Bob on at the moment, and I think that will be a really useful tool, because the reality is one of the biggest problems in our life is everyone's life, we're time poor. So if we can make something easier and quicker for people, then why wouldn't we want to do that, especially for our attendees?
No, 100%. And as the fitness industry evolves, what marketing trends do you think will gain traction in the coming years as well? I know you're saying like marketing isn't really your thing, but I feel like it is also.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So when we look at marketing as opposed to elevate marketing and the fitness industry or the physical activity space, I'm very passionate that the physical activity sector as a whole can support getting everyone active.
Yeah.
Like every type of person out there, there is a solution within the physical activity space. So collectively, the operators and sports centres and people that can facilitate getting people moving, and I mean that all the way through to like the National Trust getting people out walking, all the way up to high-end performance gyms, they all play a part. So as a collective, we can support that. But individually, we must understand, or they must understand, I'm not one of them anymore, every operator or facilitator of that should understand who they are for and market to them where they are and who they need. The reality is that, use the example of the National Trust, they know who they can engage to get out and walking more, and they have a marketing strategy that really targets them. And that will be very different to someone like Gymbox, who know exactly who they want. They need a person with a disposable income of, I think it's about £150, might be a bit more than that lives in London and wants something cool and kind of edgy, and their marketing strategy will be very, very different to them as the Pure Gyms of the world or a local authority. So I think it's really about, and the operators in the fitness industry and the physical activity space, understanding collectively we are for everybody, but individually who are we for, and choosing a marketing strategy that is really appropriate for those people, and kind of trust that everyone else has got everything else sorted. Yeah. And that's how I think collectively the sector can get more people active.
No, 100%. See, you can do marketing. Marketing expert over here. And obviously Elevate has become this recognised event in the industry, as we know. What do you believe are essential tips for the building the brand presence? So how can we apply these lessons and knowing, because obviously most of the recognition of Elevate is because of the brand presence. How have you built that over the years?
Consistency, I think, is a big part of it. We've always just made sure we are there, and we are kind of loosely there for the whole year, but obviously building up more to the event itself. I think what was really interesting when we did the kind of brand rip apart and what are we, and it's not the name that they called it, but I've kind of coined it the 5-year-old test, that every time you say this is our strategy or this is our mission, the question has to be why. And once you answer that why, until you just kind of get really into the crux of it. And I think if your brand and your mission or any decision that you make can pass that 5-year-old test, so you can keep giving the answer why, then you end up kind of going, yeah, that's definitely it. So with Elevate was like, we make this cross-sector event to bring together physical activity, health, performance, to get people more active. Why? Well, because we understand that the problem is not as simple as getting people into gyms. It's not a one-stop shop like solution. We have multiple things that need to get people active. Okay, why? Well, because it's a behaviour change that's really, really complex, and we are not, physical activity is such like getting people active needs a diverse makeup of knowledge and experience from GPs and blah, 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 blah. And you just keep going through that kind of, but why, until you kind of go, right, yeah, I'm 100% sure all of that stacks up in my initial statement.
Yeah.
And the same can kind of go for any kind of brand decision when you're kind of making sure your brand message. And you have to really make sure you're being true to the brand constantly and consistently. I think that's...
Not just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah. And I
which
think
a lot of people do.
Yeah. And I think it's really understanding and believing in it. Like, I fully believe every time I write something about Elevate or we put something together and a team puts something together, I'm like, do I fully believe that? Yes, I do. In that case, it's fine. If you don't fully believe it, it is obvious.
Yeah. And I think with events, it does need a purpose because otherwise it does feel a bit fake, like, and not very authentic. So you're selling a purpose. There's a reason why you're putting this event, and it's because you're helping other people as well.
Yeah.
So having a purpose, I think, always is...
Yeah, I think having a purpose, having like a really strong reason as to why it exists, and understanding that it doesn't exist for us as an event organisers, although it's super important and I really love what I do and I love my job. It has to have a purpose, not just for me, but for the sector.
Yeah.
And that can only stay true as long as we are constantly checking in with them on what they actually want.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And it's our job to then facilitate it.
Yeah. So to wrap up this episode, I always like to ask my guests, what is one thing that you've learned from someone in your journey, like whether it's professionally or personally, that has really resonated with you, and maybe someone listening might also resonate with them as well?
Such a hard question.
I know.
When I read it, I was like, oh, what shall I talk about?
It could be anything.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a few kind of like mottos, I guess, or things I often say.
Yeah.
One of the things my friends laugh at me. I'm like, productivity is never an accident. And that's really kind of like, it all happens because you have to work hard. And that kind of feeds into, without something negative, life is hard. You have to pick your hard. If you don't pick it and own it, you're just going to be thrown into something that's really difficult that you're not enjoying. So kind of turning up to an event not feeling prepared is really hard and not a comfortable place in. So the opposite is working really, really hard for those 3 months leading up to the event. The whole year, of course, but those three months of late nights, constantly thinking about all the problems and the things and resolving them. That is hard. But if you don't do that, you're going to have another harder time. So you've got to pick what your hard is. And I think that's life in general. Like, personally, we're just at the end of a kitchen renovation, living through building work for the last week and a half, and we were lucky we were away for the first week of it. That was hard, but living with a kitchen that was falling apart was really hard as well. So it's kind of like you've just got to pick the bit that is hard and do that. And the other thing, I know you said one thing, but it all kind of feeds into that, is if you're not working at and getting better at something, you're getting worse at it.
Yeah.
And that really feeds into that kind of, you have to pick your hard. And a personal kind of anecdote that really shows it to me was, years ago, I used to be in musical theatre and that kind of world. And over the years, I kind of realised that wasn't what I was going to do. And I stopped practicing and stopped singing and all that kind of stuff. And actually during the pandemic, I thought, you know what, I haven't sung for years. I'm going to have lessons. And so virtual lessons, and it ended up being face-to-face lessons in the end when the world opened back up. And I remember having this conversation with this singing teacher who's now a really good friend, being like, yeah, I can sing. I've got my grade 8 in musical theatre and and I did this and I've done that. And getting there and going, I haven't sung for years, like 10 years maybe. And I don't know how to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And it was that thing, it's like, if you're not getting better, you're just getting worse, you know, because someone else is getting better and they're overtaking you. And because if you don't use it, you lose it. So when that comes into work, for me, I don't spend half as much time as I used to selling in the very traditional pick up the phone, have a conversation way.
Yeah.
But any moment I get that, I go, I'm going to do a couple of hours of sales calls,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, this feels so good again. And I'm just kind of reminding myself how to do it and how to have those conversations, because I'm very aware if I don't, at some point, I won't be as good at it as I was.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to the whole thing. It's if you can either be hard to put in the time to make sure you do it, or it can be hard to the reality of when you go, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. I love that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Lucy, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Is there anywhere that we can find you or find more about Elevate? I mean, I don't want everyone hounding you on LinkedIn, but
it should get better at LinkedIn. I've started going, I must read my messages on LinkedIn, because I almost missed the message from you on there, and I was like, I'm terrible at LinkedIn messaging. But yes, Elevate is across social media. Typically, you'll find us most vocal on LinkedIn and Instagram. Obviously, the Elevate website, especially when registration goes live in January, that's where you'll see most of the information about who's there and how to get there yourselves. And in regards to the program, that kind of goes live kind of towards the end of March, typically mid towards the end of March. So you can then see all the sessions. And then me personally, LinkedIn, and then you can follow my ramblings on Instagram as well, which I'm not brilliant at posting a massive amount, and my marketing team constantly say, Lucy, you need to post.
Is that your personal one?
Yeah, and just like when they're like at events, like, Lucy, you really need to post one. I'm like,
there's so much to do though. People to talk to, things to see. Like,
I just
got
think,
to do social media.
I just think, how do influencers do it?
I don't know,
I think
honestly.
Once I had this idea that I was going to take over the Elevate Instagram page and do a day in the life, and I was like, this is exhausting. This is so much to do. And then typically face to face, you'll find me at pretty much any industry event that I can get to. I'm at in London for an event this week, and then going to Dubai for Dubai Active Health Club Management Summit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'm there on Thursday.
I'm going there.
Oh, good.
So I'll see you there.
Yes, I'll see you there. And then I'm at an exhibition event the next day.
Oh my gosh.
And then I fly to Dubai the next day for Dubai Active. So this is one of those weeks where I am all over the place. But I love every moment.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you.